we should be so grateful for how much dogs teach us and how much they bounce back from trauma. Because at the end of the day, I think what people don't realize is Korean dogs have been through such amount of trauma in their life that they need a lot of understanding and patience. And they don't always know what it means to have that love and trust and have that feeling of security. So for them, everything is a learning experience, and showing them kindness, that there's hope for them and they deserve it. And once they find that kindness, they really start to trust more. And that's, just the basic principle of rescue. Show the dog kindness and love. And because of how dogs are built and how they think, they will accept it and they'll become who they're supposed to be.
Welcome to MythBarkers, where we make dog parenting easier by sniffing out the facts and debunking dog tales. So we recently spoke with Audrey Luck, the founder of Luck's Rescue, which is based in rural Georgia. Today we're going to be speaking with another incredible expert in the rescue space. She is the co-founder and executive director of a rescue who operates internationally, saving dogs from Korea and adopting them out all across the U.S. But I'll let Yena tell you a little bit more about her.
Gina started rescuing dogs and cats locally in 2012 and has since rehomed thousands of homeless animals throughout New York City. Born in South Korea, Gina came to the US at a young age, and armed with a background in animal rescue and activism, she founded Korean Canine Rescue and is working to end the dog meat trade in Korea with the partnership of many local and regional Korean activists and rescuers. She finds forever homes for thousands of dogs that are rescued by Korean Canine Rescue. I adopted my incredible Jindo mix Luke from Korean Canine Rescue, and the onboarding process, as well as the acute care that goes into each and every dog, was truly eye-opening. Gina, thank you for joining us today.
I'm so excited to speak to you, and congratulations on this podcast. I think it's going to be really insightful, and it's something that's needed in the rescue and pet space.
Thank you so
we felt
much.
that as well, because initially Laura and I were just talking about how we can support rescues, because we saw that after the pandemic rescue boom, there was a lot that organizations needed in terms of support from animal lovers, from pet parents, from rescuers. So we wanted to make a community where like-minded people can share information and really find the root of the cause and find solutions for problems that we can help with. So we have a couple of questions that we have for you, so to reveal a little bit more about yourself.
So Gina, you started rescuing back in 2012 and have since rehomed thousands of animals around New York City, which just thank you so much. I can't even imagine the impact that you've had on not only the animals, but also all the families that you've placed those animals with. It's like, how did you get started?
Yeah, so I started volunteering at a local Brooklyn rescue called Sean Casey Animal Rescue. I believe he's been around for decades, and I learned a lot volunteering there. And I brought a lot of dogs from down south, some rescue friends and network connections that I had down south. And I brought up hundreds of dogs from Arkansas, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and transported them back to that Brooklyn shelter. And I learned a lot about the process from Sean Casey himself. And then I also volunteered at a dachshund rescue and the ACC. And I fostered some dachshunds from the ACC that had been dropped off at an elderly age and needed rehab. I also learned a lot from that process, and eventually I adopted my own dachshund from the dachshund rescue. He was basically born blind and deaf due to genetic inbreeding. I got him at 5 years old, and the vets were telling me, like, look, he may not live that long. And today he's 19 years old.
Wow.
Oof.
And
you proved them wrong.
Yeah.
You were like, no, there is life here.
Yeah, I definitely want to keep him going every day, and he is a character. He's definitely a little bit smarter, I think, than my other two dogs. He's always a step ahead of them. But yeah, he brings a lot of joy, and he's my heart dog, and I love him so much. And he really inspired me to keep helping, not only just abandoned and homeless dogs, but dogs that really had a special need. But as far as South Korea, my family is still there. So I went to visit them in 2015. And at that time, I was volunteering locally here. And I wanted to know what a Korean shelter or homeless dog, what that situation looked like. because I had seen a lot of videos at that time and read a lot of stories about the dog meat trade and just how the shelter system or lack of shelters there are in South Korea. So I did visit them, but I wouldn't even call them shelters. Just it's a really sad situation. The things that I saw like cages in the middle of rice paddy fields that had no walls surrounding them or covering from the elements. One particular shelter, I walked down the road about 500 feet and there was a dog meat farm with 200 dogs living in cages, and some of them had poop inside just all the way up to the ceiling, and the dogs were just circling around the poop, and it was very surreal and almost like a horror movie. And I went back to the shelter and I just thought, like, what can we do to give these dogs hope and get them out of this situation? At that time, there did not seem to be many rescues exporting dogs to places where they had a chance of a forever home and rescue just in general. So started with a few dogs locally in New York City, and the community embraced these dogs and they really loved the look of the dogs and hearing their story and seeing how resilient they were. And 4 dogs turned into 6 dogs, turned into 8 dogs, and now it's 3,500 plus dogs in the tri-state area.
Woo!
Wow.
I mean, I
Thank
think
you.
we have to clap to that.
That's
That is
amazing.
That is
Just 10
incredible.
years. 3,500 dogs.
Well, we officially started in 2018. We became a
Okay.
501c3. But yes, during the process, of getting the 501c and, getting these dogs here, yeah, it's a little bit more than 3,500.
Gina, I just got chills. That is incredible. And I know this is logistically, there is so many processes, so many points of contact from when a dog is rescued in Korea to finding a home in the US. Throughout this process, and other areas in general, what do you think is the most challenging part of your job?
It's definitely the logistical aspect. We're working with a lot of NGO groups on the ground in South Korea that don't get government funding. In fact, you can't even adopt a dog and collect an adoption fee if you're just an individual rescuer. It's illegal in South Korea. So there's a lot of laws to holding back these dogs finding homes in South Korea. And I think the logistical aspect of it is probably the hardest, and people don't realize how hard it is to get the dogs here.
Yeah.
Between actually rescuing them and rehabilitating them, and then going through a flight volunteer process. We need to get a USDA permit. We need to get a CDC ticket entered for clearance. And all of this is part of the paperwork process and timing of getting these permits, and then finding flight volunteers, and then actually getting the flight volunteers to take the dogs here. Now we have it down to a science, but it took several years to get through all these logistical hurdles to get, and it's still, a long process. It's a costly process. I would say, the expenses to save one dog from beginning to end is thousands. So it's hard for people to fathom when they do get here how much these dogs have been through and how much resources and logistical effort it takes to get these dogs into a stable, safe environment. So eventually, when they're actually here and they're in foster care for the first time, it's a very magical moment to see them go home.
So
I can't
rewarding.
imagine. How long is that process, do you think, the journey from when they get rescued in Korea to making it at least to the foster home? Not even the adoption process, but just the rescue and transport. How long does that take generally?
It really depends on the situation they come from. I would say the hardest dogs are the puppy mill dogs. So in South Korea, we shut down a lot of puppy mills. We formed a coalition called Lucy's Law, and we're advocating for stricter puppy mill laws to be enacted against the breeders. It's a billion-dollar industry in South Korea. There's so many puppy mills. And I'm sure, Yena, you've seen when you go to South Korea and you pass by a pet store, they have so many of these small little white dogs.
This big.
Yeah, these little micro, they keep breeding them smaller and smaller. But these dogs have such tremendous health issues that require a lot of resources, a lot of time. So a puppy mill dog could take anywhere from 3 to 5 months after surgeries, luxating patella, echocardiograms, hernias from having multiple births. A lot of them have pyrometria, which is basically an infection of the uterus from having to pump out so many babies without any medical care. And those dogs are the hardest in terms of health rehabilitation, so
Right.
vetting, because then, we can't do all the surgeries at once. We have to space them out. We have to give time for them to heal. And then, part of that rehabilitation process is also socialization. And I would say a lot of these dogs are pretty fast with socialization. But as compared to a dog that's rescued from a dog meat farm, those dogs actually are rehabilitated pretty quickly, and anywhere from, I would say, 60 to 90 days of rehabilitation.
Wow.
Shelter dogs that we pull from high kill shelters are even faster. Sometimes they're ready to go in 45 to 60 days. And puppy mill dogs, of course, are the longest.
How do you evaluate when a dog is ready to be transported and then put to a foster home?
That's a really good question. There's several ways we evaluate it. One is their socialization, how they react to humans and how they respond to just tactile touch. And also if they're able to take food outside, if they feel comfortable enough that they're able to actually take treats and food outside, that's a good indication that they're ready. If they're walking on a leash, if they get along with other dogs, if they, allow handling by people and collaring, and they have a tolerance level that is high enough to where they can rebound from stressful situations, that's a good indicator as well.
That's good to know. Oh, it's so touching to hear that, a lot of these dogs that are from really traumatic situations, like for dog meat trade, it's really heartwarming to find out that they get rehabilitated within 60 to 90 days, because I can't imagine how much that would affect your psyche of your distrust in people. And the fact that they learn to trust and love again is really incredible and shows the capacity of resilience and really their capacity for love.
They teach us so much, and we should be so grateful for how much dogs teach us and how much they bounce back from trauma. Because at the end of the day, I think what people don't realize is with our dogs, the Korean dogs have been through such amount of trauma in their life that they need a lot of understanding and patience. And comparing that to maybe a domestic dog that has been in a home before and has experienced love from an early age, yes, it's tragic that they lost their home and their family, but they know what that feels like. For Korean dogs, they don't always know what it means to belong to a family and have that love and trust and have that feeling of security. So for them, everything is a learning experience. And every interaction that our staff and our team and volunteers do with these dogs is showing them kindness, that there's hope for them and they deserve it. And once they find that kindness, they really start to trust more. And that's just the basic principle of rescue. Show the dog kindness and love, and because of how dogs are built and how they think, they will accept it and they'll become who they're supposed to be.
They're so
They're
resilient.
incredibly acute, aren't they? When I'm down, Luke is the first person to know. He comes straight away. He goes, "Are you okay?" And I remember when Luke first came into our household, he was a little hesitant about the new environment, but every treat we gave him, every piece of affection we gave him, he looked at us like it was both foreign and lovely. And now he's very used to it. But I remember in the beginning, I found it shocking that he found it shocking that he was in a different environment. He was like, "Wait, this treat's for me?" We would throw him birthday parties. He would be like, "This is for me. Can I eat this cake?" And I just felt that was so sweet of him.
And now he loves the attention. Now he's
Yep, now he
Now we can't get enough.
Absolutely.
Gina, it sounds so eye-opening how fundamentally it seems like dogs are treated differently and raised differently, just considered very differently in society over in Korea than they are here. I would imagine also the laws are probably different too. Having experience working in US-based shelters and rescues, and then now with your organization, how does that differ? What does that look like?
Well, there's a big difference when I first started rescuing in South Korea to where it's now. Things have progressed a lot. And things have changed a lot, because I think that in general, South Korea's younger population has really made a move towards animal welfare. And they really do care about dogs much more than they did 10 or 12 years ago. And it's changed so much. In between that time, we don't see, these shelters that are running with no resources and no roof above their head anymore. We rarely see that. Now shelters have funding from the community, maybe not the government itself, but at least the community is pitching in to support. The handling of the dogs is much better. I think the understanding that dogs have these special needs has evolved over the years. So really, we see a progression in animal welfare. You know, the laws are there to protect dogs, companion animals in South Korea, but they're not really enforced. So I think that's the big difference between the US and, you know, maybe some other countries that are struggling with enforcement. We don't see a lot of justice for these situations where dogs are put into dog meat farms and slaughtered in front of each other, which is completely illegal under South Korean law, that another animal should not see another animal of its own species being executed. However, what has worked to our advantage as a rescue in South Korea is being able to report these things and use the law to our advantage, and then hold it the law enforcement agencies accountable to enforce that. So a lot of times, if we're going to shut down a slaughterhouse, we can use those specific animal cruelty laws in our favor to actually, you know, get that slaughterhouse shut down or close that dog meat farm. But it really needs to be about community involvement and reporting and awareness.
It sounds like there are shortages in the enforcement aspect, both in the US and in Korea, and the fact that volunteers or people from the community can go observe and report these places really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I really have to applaud the activists because they go in guns blazing. They are just like, we're ready.
We're on a mission.
We're on a mission and we have the law on our side. We've talked to the police department. They're coming with us, you know, and the way that these groups are able to really rally and just form a strategic plan in taking down a lot of these dog meat farms and slaughterhouses is it's so inspirational and so moving that they can form a task force and we can do this together. And recently, you know, over the last, I would say 24 months, we really started partnering with as many rescue groups as we can, because one rescue group alone cannot take down a slaughterhouse. But 5 of us going as an entire unit, like with our Lucy's Law Coalition against puppy mill shutdowns. We do that as a unit together. We work together, which I don't see a lot of that happening in the US. But in South Korea, we all have the same mission. And we don't really care about, you know, like this group is over here in this side of the country and that group is on the other side. We all come together for that one purpose. And that's to complete the mission, rescue the dogs, and find them new homes.
That's
so
beautiful.
I really think it's a powerful movement that's happening in animal welfare in South Korea.
I wonder if that could be adopted here. I wish that approach could be adopted here, right? It's not about the credit, who's doing what. It's like, let's all come together for the greater cause of saving these animals, advocating for these animals.
Yeah, 100%. You know, maybe not every rescue group is not gonna do what everybody else does, but together we're a powerful voice and we can make a lot of change. You know, I try to do that here in New York by just being on good terms with other rescue groups. We may not be doing exactly the same thing, but we're all in it for the same reason. Korean Canine tries to have at least 2 or 3 times a year multi-rescue dog adoption events that we sponsor in Prospect Park, where we try to bring as many rescue groups together as possible. I think that the U.S. could definitely make a move to just networking the groups together more. I would love to see that.
Together for the animals.
Yes.
But you're leading by example. So I love that. And maybe we put a call to action out there because, you know, we have an audience of a lot of people who are in the rescue space. So
yeah,
maybe we'll
100%.
feel inspired to help band together to make positive change.
Yeah, and just even having kind of a mixed bag of all these rescue groups coming together just really expands the whole adoption awareness part of, you know, what we're here for.
So can I ask then, because, you know, at MythBarkers, we're all about, we want to debunk these myths and the misinformation that's out there. And I think there is understanding that there's so many dogs that need help. Everyone has seen the ASPCA campaigns that have been running for decades, right? Why would anyone want to, or why should they adopt an international dog when there's so many dogs out here, right? I think there's maybe that belief there that why do that? There's dogs here that need help. What would you say to that?
Yeah, and we've been confronted with that question before. Not that often. I would say that New Yorkers are pretty open-minded when it comes to where the dogs come from. No, not all of the rescue dogs that are adopted here come from New York City. A lot of them come from other parts of the country, a lot from down south, a lot from the islands, Puerto Rico. I know that a lot of these other outside countries make up a very small percentage of rescue dogs coming into the United States. So if you look at the overall stats from the USDA, about 11% are from international rescues. And that's these rescue dogs coming in from other countries. So it's a really small sliver in the entire rescue adoption space. We're a very small percentage. We're not going to be doing these high amount of adoptions every month. We're going to be doing, about a fraction of what everybody else does. But it also gives people an option of where they want to get their dogs from, because you may have somebody that would never even think of adopting from their local shelter. And this is very true with a lot of our adopters. They didn't think about adopting from their local shelter because maybe they just didn't have the kind of dog that they were interested in. But they saw a Korean dog and they said, oh, you know what? I really like the story and what the mission is about. And that resonates with me. And so that kind of awareness to that subset of people that like Korean Jindos, we like to highlight that we are just a small little fragment of the overall percentage of adoptions in the U.S. And then also we are still spreading the word of adoption. So a lot of people that have adopted from us maybe weren't thinking about adopting before, but they adopted a dog and now they are like, adopt, adopt, adopt. Whether it's from your local shelter or from an international group or from a domestic group, that kind of attitude has caught on. And I think it's really helped the rescue adoption space in general in the United States, really, and finding more dogs homes in general. I mean, this is what it's about. It's about being on the same page, and people have the right to choose. I do think that there is kind of like this America First mentality, and some people have that, and that's their right to have that. But at the same time, there's also people that have the right to choose where they're getting their dog from. Some people go to breeders and choose to, buy a dog from a breeder. And, you can't stop those people from doing it. But again, it should be their choice if the breeder is ethical, as should adopting a Korean dog be somebody's choice, or from the Cayman Islands, or a Puerto Rican dog, because that resonates with them.
Yeah. Is it harder to get bigger dogs adopted within Korea?
100%.
Oh.
It depends on what your definition of a big dog is.
I feel like in Korea, a big dog would be a medium dog. Because, most people I see have very small dogs. But then again, last year I went to Korea and I saw so many dogs. And this is something that I've observed recently. It seems like the tides are turning and they're more open to getting a medium-sized dog and very rarely a large-sized dog. But I know also the culture and the living situation in Korea, because most people live in apartments, they prefer to have smaller dogs.
That's the excuse, yes. But if you look at New York City, we kind of have the same type of living situation here.
That is so true.
Yeah. And our rescue manager, Vicky, she has a 90-pound dog in a studio apartment, and she also fosters. Baloo. And she also dog sits.
I love that.
And I mean, the theory here is you give the dog what it needs, right? And the dog will be happy. So you give the dog the fulfillment of having that love, even if it's a small apartment, which I do believe that big dogs can thrive in small apartments as long as they're getting the fulfillment they need outdoors. And pretty much, our dogs, our Korean Jindos, they're like cats sometimes. They just love to lounge around and be lazy. And outdoors, they turn into these hunting dogs that want to do agility.
Yep. For sure.
So they do make really good apartment dogs. And I hope that, people can see the benefit in owning a big dog. They're super cuddly. They're super, they're gentle giants, for the most part. So there's so many benefits. But I think, pushing big dog adoption is really hard here in the United States too.
Yeah.
It's a stigma, and people want that smaller dog that maybe can go on a plane with them, or, go places with them. But at the end of the day, I think that if people got to learn more about the benefits of owning a big dog, we could really help boost that number.
I mean, just the way they cuddle. It's
the body.
Perfect cuddle size. I love it. That's enlightening. So there's still a stigma in Korea as well about larger dogs.
Yes, 100%. So
I didn't know that.
A large dog could be anywhere from 20 pounds to, we brought in our first Tosa Inus from the dog meat trade, and Yena, you took beautiful pictures of our lovely, wrinkly-faced Tosas.
They were so sweet and gentle, both
So
of
cute.
them. I was like, oh, angels.
Yeah, and I really struggled with responsibility and ethics of where to place them. And they are mastiffs, so that breed is known to be gentle giants. But at the same time, under stressful situations and the wrong exposure, they can, there's also some behavioral concerns. And when they came in, I had seen them in Korea many times, so I knew that they would be great. They just needed the right fit. And I think really, giving a lot of exposure to stories and also being really upfront and honest about their needs has helped them find the right home. They both went to really lovely homes, and I can't say enough about their adopters. They've done amazing work with them, but it is difficult to find homes for larger dogs here, and in South Korea, it's just obsolete, like very, very hard. I think the adoption rate in South Korea is still about at 15% in shelters. So those dogs are overlooked. Those dogs are euthanized on a regular basis. Our center is full of big dogs right now. And when I talk about big dogs, I'm saying 20 pounds and over, not our
Not our
consideration.
65 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely different when you consider 20-pound dog here is small to us.
That's right.
When Yena was talking to me about Korean Canine Rescue and her experience with Luke and just working through your organization, she just couldn't talk about how much of a wonderful experience it was, how like thorough and in-depth and the amount of support. Can you talk a little bit about what that process is like and how you help the transition of these dogs from an application through to adoption?
Yeah, when I first started Korean Canine, I knew some of the pitfalls of rescue and of adopting dogs out just generally to the public. Things have changed a lot. And I think the different factors here are taking a look at where these dogs are coming from, taking a look at how logistically hard it is to get the dogs here and how much effort is put into transporting these dogs here, and then realizing that we need to have a process where we're doing the best service that we can for the dog and the human alike. If we don't have some sort of policy and process in place, we will have very high return rates. We'll have behavioral issues. We'll have dogs being euthanized. The list goes on and on. So I really wanted to make sure that we are very ethical about how we place our dogs. And that may be just having a little bit more process than, say, a shelter or a domestic rescue that wouldn't have these kind of trauma dogs that need a little extra patience and care. A lot of these dogs, they need decompression time. So transferring from environment to environment, they have to reset. And they need time to do that. So we do ask that adopter stay with their dog for the first 30 days in the same place. So the dog can start to feel like a routine and a pattern and a safe space. And then eventually working with the trainer to expand this dog's perimeter and new environments and things and slow exposure. I think that's pretty common with a lot of under-socialized trauma dogs, that you go slow. So part of the process in matching people with the right dog is evaluating what their lifestyle is going to be like after they get a dog, what their expectations are, and also a lot of empathy goes into it. So if there isn't a dog that's the right match for them, we want to make the right match, but we want to make sure that they understand why the dog may need a more specialized environment. So for us, there's a lot of scrutiny because we are an international rescue. You're bringing these dogs in, and you want everybody to feel like you're doing the right thing, right? So I know from an early on perspective that learning is really great. So education comes first. We educate the adopters about what they're getting into and what the expectations might be for the dog. And then once they have that information, they digest it and they think about the amount of time it takes for some of these dogs to acclimate. And then they can say, I'm committed to this or I'm not committed. The bottom line is we want to find commitment. And I think that's true for any rescue group or shelter. They want to find people that are just committed to the dog.
Yeah. I can attest to this process because when we adopted Luke, I remember we talked about hiring a behaviorist to help him transition easier to a new environment. There were guidelines on the type of additional nutrition that he needed in order to become his healthiest self, to thrive in a new home. There were so many resources and guidance, and I was really grateful for that because we gave Bodhi and Luke the proper interaction, and I believe that's why they ended up getting along. So all of these areas that you're giving special attention to, it plays out so positively in the long run. And I remember going through the process and thinking, wow, these are extra steps, but I'm so glad that I get to learn them because that's going to help me be a better parent to Luke.
Yeah, I would say that you had a quite extensive dog experience. And I always make a joke like, but you didn't have Korean dog experience.
It's true.
Yeah, it's just a whole different level of understanding and patience that goes into Korean dogs. And I think that that may be frustrating for some people to understand. And, education is really the key here at the end of the day. If you're not educating people about what to expect, then you're going to have a lot of returns. You're going to have a lot of behavioral issues later on. And I just don't feel like I could sleep at night without giving people all the information up front and not having us as a resource pre-adoption and post-adoption for them to fall back on. Between when we started in 2017 up until now, our return rate has been less than 1.35%.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's huge. Yeah.
We need another round of that is incredible. And I believe the process and the education early on contributes to that low number.
Yeah, and I think just finding committed adopters that are willing to be open-minded enough to, even if you've had dogs all your life and you grew up with dogs,
Right.
it's different having a Korean dog in New York City. And there's a lot of things that can be avoided and a lot of painful experiences that can be avoided if you have all the resources in front of you. So we really try to be as thorough as possible. There are horror stories that happen and some of it could have been avoided, but like it's a very small percentage. I think most people, once they get their dog, they get it. They're like, all right, I understand why you guys gave us all this information. It's an information overload, but thank you for that.
And like you said, they have the option, right? And it's not for everyone. And I love the fact that you have such a diligent process up front because you're making sure that the people are going to be committed and they're going to be the right fit. And if they're not, or you're still an advocate for rescue, and there's plenty of shelters in the area that are also options if a Korean dog is not for you. But I love the opportunity that we can raise a little bit of awareness for this because I did not know about this before I met Yena. And so what you're doing is so incredible. And if we can find more people who are willing to commit and spend the time and the energy and the patience, patience is key, right?
Yeah, it really is for any adoption from anywhere, shelters, it's just that with our process, there's a big learning curve, and most of the people that we get adopting have never had a dog before. They may have grown up with a dog, but it's different. Like having your own responsibility to this living being that came 3,000 miles to this country, and they don't want to come out of their crate the first day, or they're not eating their meal. They haven't peed in 3 days, because they've been just shocked into going into a new environment. So how do we navigate these situations for people and give them the support that they need? And we have a tremendous amount of resources, from hotlines to trainers to email support, everything that we can give them to make sure that the dog is comfortable and that they're comfortable. A lot of people just need reassurance that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Somebody telling them, like, you're doing a great job, you're being very patient. You may not see big changes right away, but all these little changes add up. And that 3-3-3 rule for all rescues.
Yes. Can you share that with our audience in case they're not familiar with the rule of threes? Because I love the rule of threes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the rescue mantra. It's for any rescue, it takes 3 days for a dog to decompress, 3 weeks for the dog to know your schedule and routine, and 3 months to finally feel at home.
I didn't know that before, and I want to blame it on media and Instagram and everything, this instant gratification that you want the puppy or the dog to join your family and be this instant happy family. And it's like, that's not really how it happens. And I think it leads to unrealistic expectations. I've taken in foster dogs that are adult dogs from the South that, they don't leave the crate for 3 days and they're not eating. And I'm thinking I'm doing something wrong. And it wasn't until I experienced it myself to know, no, this is actually a normal part of the decompression process, and just be patient. And then when you see the little wins and the little changes, it's so much more rewarding, I think.
It is.
Because you gave them that time and that ability to give trust and everything. And it's just,
it's magical.
It is magical. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard to not adopt a dog.
Oh yeah, that's another episode, foster failing and everything. Yep.
And then, you get so much reward and fulfillment from adopting a dog and seeing them grow and thrive. And it makes you want more. Like makes you want to be a part of the community, makes you want to start a podcast, all of these things.
Yep.
So Gina, you've worked with both the Korean Bundang Center as well as the Korean Canine HQ here. What do you think are the strengths of each that we could learn from?
And what is the Boondog
Oh,
Center, just
well,
for those who are
gosh.
listening?
So we have a 20,000 square foot facility that we lease in the mountains of Bundang, which is a city in South Korea right outside of Seoul. It's about 40 minutes away. And it's in the mountains for a reason, because nobody wants to hear dogs barking in the city. But it's a rehab center. It's our rescue center. And right now we have 160 dogs there that are waiting to come to the United States. We do send dogs to primarily New York, but we also send to San Francisco, LA, and sometimes Canada. But the majority of the dogs do come to New York City, and we are rehabilitating those dogs through great nutrition, vet care, and rehabilitation training. We have about 8 staff members there. We call them trainers that work with the dogs, everything from hand feeding, timid dogs, to walking on a leash. And then we have a wonderful volunteer group that comes every Wednesday and Saturday to just help us at the center, walking the dogs, socializing, getting to know them, just learning how to be patient and trust and kindness. And Yena, you've been there and seen it.
It is an incredible facility, and I was so happy to see all of the dogs looking so lively and enjoying the outdoors as well as the indoors. I was very impressed to see the setup because they have a large space. And it was eye-opening to see that because, like you said, Gina, the last I remember of dogs in Korea was a very different situation and a very different view. And to recently go there and see how much has improved and how much has changed, both in terms of culture as well as legislation, made me really happy and made me feel like this generation is making a huge, huge impact. And I think I actually asked you, do you think it's possible to end dog meat trade in Korea? And you said yes. And I was like, wow, this is
I just got chills.
this is activism happening in real time. This is incredible. So I was so touched when I went there, and the volunteers were so loving, just giving their time to care for these animals. So it was a beautiful experience.
I'm so glad that you had that experience. I feel like if you can go to any shelter and just witness it and see how beautiful these dogs are and how wonderful the people are that are involved in volunteering, and they give their heart and soul, you want to be a part of that. You want to spread the message, and you definitely see it from a different perspective than looking in the outside. So anybody that wants to come and volunteer at our rescue center in South Korea, message us, email us, and we will set you up. It's on Saturdays, though.
You talked about also the activism and the change that you've been a part of over there. What are some of the changes that you think need to be made here in the States that you'd like to see in the future?
Definitely a crackdown on puppy mills. Much like South Korea, there is an overwhelming amount of puppy mills that are unregulated in the United States and sometimes even endorsed by pedigree foundations that are not operating ethically. And again, if you can't meet the mother of the dog, or you are meeting a puppy that you're buying in the back room of an apartment or something like that, something is wrong, right? You need to see the mother, you need to see the father, you need to see the conditions that they're coming from. I think there should be a minimum age for buying a dog, a puppy.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about the minimum age of the person, but actually the minimum age of the puppy. I mean, some of these puppies are going out the door at 2 months, but we are also complicit in not enforcing regulations and oversight into the puppy mill industry. And it's really ruining a lot of lives. One thing that New York State did was they passed the pet store ban in December. So that, I think, is a really big step in shutting down some of these puppy mills and store sales. We talk about the adopt, don't shop movement. And sometimes that's triggering for people because people do buy dogs from ethical breeders. And some people are like, adopt, don't shop is just such a general statement. And it was really meant to combat the puppy mill in stores, the puppy mill sales in the actual pet stores. It wasn't meant for the good breeder. so to speak, because really that is the prevalent issue. And even New York State saw it and said, hey, we're going to follow states like California and implement no puppy mills, pet sales anymore. So it's changing slowly, but the regulations could be better because once again, where are these people going to buy the cute puppy that they saw on the internet? They're going to buy it online, or they're going to have it imported from overseas. So there are some more action that can be taken against unregulated breeders and backyard puppy producers.
So you have a lot of experience with activism, both in Korea and here. I read that on Jan 9th, 2024, South Korea's National Assembly passed a law banning the breeding, slaughter, and sale of dogs for human consumption. The law will take effect in 2027 after a 3-year grace period. Can you talk to us about what kind of movement prompts legislative change?
I think having the work that we're doing in place, the youth have really pushed for this change, and many rescue groups in South Korea have really pressed for this change for decades. It started with 1980s, the Olympics, going to South Korea, and people were outraged about hearing that there were dogs being raised for consumption during that time. And so these activists and rescue groups started to form from that public exposure and really started to, put pressure and accountability on the South Korean government to do something. And from there, it just kind of grew as more young people were getting dogs and seeing them as companions. They didn't want to participate in or have South Korea known as a country that produces dogs for consumption. And I think that really spearheaded where we're at today. With the legislation that passed, but also the push for activism and then the global pressure too as well helped in that change. But really, it came from the inside with a lot of youth that spoke up and volunteered at shelters and participated in activism and rescues. And I think that's what's going to change the future of animal welfare in Korea as well.
Awareness and education is a huge part of all of these movements and all of the forward changes.
Yeah, and just making the connection that, the pet dog that you have in your apartment is no different than the dog that's in the cage at the dog meat farm.
That's right.
So taking it back to a more local level, right? How can our audience here, because we want to help dog parents and make pet parenting easier, but we also want to have an impact. How can people get involved and support you and Korean Canine Rescue?
We are always looking for volunteers. We're looking for fosters. We are looking for funding. We're looking for grants. We're looking for anything that will help us expand our programs. Our programs don't necessarily involve just South Korea. We've also opened up a community shelter program where we've pledged to take 10 to 15% of our intake from local shelters. We started this many years ago, just not something that we had announced until we got approved as an ACC New Hope partner at the New York City shelters this year.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Wow.
Thank you. It's something I always wanted to do, but we were mostly taking in local dogs in New York City that hadn't entered the shelter yet. And then a few through other rescue groups would pull them out of the ACC for us. But we definitely want to make an impact locally because we have the platform, we have the community backing and support. Now, funding is just another issue, but we're working on that. And if we can expand that program, we aim to make a really big difference in the local shelter population. And we're not taking dogs that are available for public adoption. We're taking the at-risk dogs. Because of our rehabilitation skills, we're able to take dogs that may be on the euthanasia list because of certain behavioral issues that we think that we could help rehabilitate and adopt out successfully. And so, so far, we've taken out a couple dogs from ACC earlier this year, and we plan to keep it going.
Incredible. I love that. And congratulations. That's a huge move. I'm very happy for you and Korean Canine Rescue.
Thank you. We're excited about it. We love helping out, the community as well, and the community supports it. And I think that we weren't at a place early on in our existence to do that, but now we have the ability to do it. So we're going to keep going.
Love to hear it. So Gina, living in Brooklyn, when I walk around Prospect Park, I know I can spot so many Jindo mixes, and it brings so much joy to my heart because in some way I know they have interacted with Korean Canine Rescue and you, and it is a huge difference to see so many Jindos in our area. And every time I meet a new Jindo parent, we bond like we've known each other like for 5, 10 years, because I think there is this internal connection of, like you said, being a parent to a Korean dog that is so incredibly rewarding that when we see each other in the wild, we're like, you get me. You get me. We understand each other. So there's another layer of culture, another layer of community and love that you've created in Brooklyn and New York City. So I just wanted to mention that because your impact doesn't only go towards the dogs and the dog parents in the homes, it forms culture within a new city and a community of really acutely like-minded people. And you created that. So I wanted to first thank you and second, really show you the much deserved appreciation.
Really, really special to me. I tend to not, focus on that aspect of it so much, but when I hear about it, it kind of just blows my mind because I'm like, wow, yes, we brought these dogs in, but at the same time, like the people have made such a difference and formed their own communities and their own lifetime friendships. I even heard about a couple of alumni getting married.
Oh.
And I'm like, you guys, like you can't create a better story. Like it's just really amazing to see the connection that the Korean dogs have brought to Brooklyn, especially Brooklyn, because I think Prospect Park is like the heart of it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's where we all meet up, intentionally or unintentionally.
And Gina, I have to thank you because you've shared so much information. You're obviously so knowledgeable about the rescue space, what you're doing, not just in the States, but internationally. And I have such an appreciation for how much hard work and everything that goes into what you're doing. So thank you. But also, you're so hopeful. You have such light and passion. Of course, my dogs are barking now.
He's like, I agree.
Yeah, I agree. Tell her thanks. Yeah.
Time's expired, Mom.
But just you're so inspiring, and you're not just accepting that the system is broken, you're doing something to make a difference, and you're activating for other people, encouraging other people to also make a difference, and you feel that there's hope for it to be better. And I know a lot of people, it's very easy to be hardened in this space and, just accept things the way they are. So I just have to say thank you because you've left both of us so inspired today, and I hope inspired some listeners and viewers to maybe do something as well to support your organization and the larger rescue space.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say that we're working on some programs this year where we want to remove some financial barriers from people that maybe did not look at adopting an international dog because the cost is a little bit more expensive. So we're working on a couple of programs where we can make it more of a hybrid of an open adoption process. But that doesn't mean, we're not going to still do our diligence, but financially, we definitely want people to be able to adopt a Korean dog if that's what they want, if that's what they're committed to.
So if a listener wants to either donate or adopt from Korean Canine Rescue, what are the best resources? What are the channels that you would send them to first?
Go to KoreanCanineRescue.org and hit the adopt page, and all the information is there. But come and meet us at adoption events. We are grinding it out every weekend, Saturdays and Sundays. We'll be at Petco's in the city, and come and meet the dogs. Come and talk to us. We'd love to talk to you and just tell you more about how wonderful it is to adopt a Korean Jindo and what it's like to own a Korean dog in the city. A lot of our volunteers and staff have a Korean dog, so they could tell you so much. That's the best part about what we do.
And for those who are not in the New York area, you also can follow Gina and Korean Canine Rescue and all the amazing work that they're doing, as well as see the adoptable animals on Instagram and Facebook.
Yes, and we do take applications from outside of the state on a case-by-case basis. We've adopted to San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, a lot of different states. So we're open, we're flexible.
Amazing.
That's great to know. Gina, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to speak to you. And we look forward to sharing Korean Canine Rescue to our audiences, and beyond.
And thank you everyone for tuning in, and stay tuned for our next episode of MythBarkers.
Thank you for having me. Had a great time.